Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing Lapvona, written by Ottessa Moshfegh. Like every book that Otesssa Moshfegh writes, it's got unlikable characters, but it's very different. This book is set in medieval times, so that's a big difference. But it also has many characters that she concentrates on in this book, not just one main character. But most of the characters in this book, if not all of them, are unlikable. So we've got differences in the way this book's presented than most Otesssa Moshfegh books have been in the past. It makes for an interesting read, and I did enjoy this book. Again, I think it's a book that will polarize readers. Many people will just hate this book because of unlikable characters or different scenes in the book. Many people will just turn their nose up and hate the book for that. But if you can get past that, if you can read the book, still enjoy the characters even though they're unlikable, because they're written that way, they're meant to be unlikable. And there are interesting questions asked in this book. I think some of them are very important questions, and it does make you think. Every book from this author that I've read in the past, including this one as well, makes me think about those questions after I've finished the book as well. So it's a book where you can enjoy the story, you can think about those questions while you're reading it, but you can't help but continue thinking about those questions after you read it. So this book is set in medieval times, and it has two main settings. We have a village, and this village is very destitute. A lot of people are almost starving at times in this village, so it's a very poor village. They're subsistence farmers, basically, so they grow crops or tend to animals. A lot of the things what they grow or tend to go to the lord of the manor. So the second setting is a manor house where the lord lives. So they pay taxes to the lord. They give goods to the lord as well. So it's subsistence farming, and a lot of time they're starving, they're hungry. So it's a very hard life in this village. But the people in the village think the lord who lives in the manor, they think he's wonderful. They think he cares for them. They think he has their best interest at heart. And they're also very religious, and they trust the priest in this book. But the priest in the book often works with the lord, whose name's Villain, often works with him to trick the people in the village into agreeing to things like extra taxes, or believing that no water is available in a drought when the lord of the manor is hoarding water in a way. So things like that happen in the book. So the people in the village are very trusting. They have a lot of faith in religion. And it opens up a lot of questions in this book. Questions about power balance. What does power do to people? Is power ultimately evil, or is power good? Does it matter about the person who has power? Does that mean power is good or evil, or does power corrupt? And it also talks about religion and faith. Is blind faith good, or should you question? Should you just agree to anything that's told to you in the name of faith, in the name of religion? So those questions are asked in this story, and they're not asked blatantly. So you don't read text that asks you that question. They're asked in the way the story is presented, the way it's written. So in the situations that happen in this book, that ask a question. And when you're reading this, certain things that happen to certain characters in the story, you can't help but think about it. And certain characters have epiphanies as well. They see the light about certain things and change their viewpoint. So that may direct you in thinking about certain questions as well in the book. I'm not going to go into all the things that ask those questions, because it's not my job to point those out to you, but it is interesting to see them in the story. And I do like the way that it makes you think about them. And I think in that way, books from this author are very powerful. One of the central characters in this story, and we have two central characters really, one of them is called Marek, and he starts off as a small boy in the village, and his father is a shepherd, has a small flock. The mother died, so Marek is told his mother died when he was a baby, and we learn later on whether that's true or not. I won't tell you whether it is or not, but it's interesting to find out later on in the story the truth about that. But anyway, Marek's life is tough. His father's not rich, they're a small flock. His father's also very violent at times, beats him. But Merrick is interesting in that he enjoys being beaten. He enjoys the pain from that. He thinks he deserves it, and he thinks that whenever someone mistreats him, whenever he's unhappy or hurt or in pain, that brings him closer to God, basically. And he believes that. So he actually does things in the story to provoke people to mistreat him and hit him and things like that. So it's not easy to read in the book when things like that happen, but it's part of his character. But what happens is that his cousin, so Merrick's cousin, is the son of the Lord of the Manor. And so there's a family tie between Merrick and his father and the Lord in the manor. And you learn later on why they're poor, and you got the wealthy cousins as well. So you learn that in the book. Merrick and his cousin, they go walking up a mountain one day, and Merrick throws a rock at him and causes him to fall off the mountain. And he falls onto some rocks and he ends up injuring himself very badly. He ends up dying. So Merrick's caused the death of his cousin, who's the only son of the Lord of the Manor. He confesses to it that what happened, and Merrick's father takes the body to his cousin, who's the Lord of the Manor, and Merrick confesses to what happened. He confesses to being the cause of this death, this accident. Rather than being punished, the Lord of the Manor decides to trade sons. He'll take Merrick, who's alive, and the dead son, who's his real son, can go back to the village. So that's a trade-off that happens in this story. So from this accident, from causing someone's death, Merrick's life changes for the better. So he's no longer living in a village, wondering where his meals are coming from. He's going to be now the wealthy adopted son of this lord in the manor. I won't go further on with Merrick's storyline. And let's talk about Ina. So Ina is the other person in this book that a lot of the book focuses on. Ina is a lady who's been in the village for many years, around a century or so, and many people think of her as a witch. And it seems like she does have some powers. And she's also been a wet nurse for people in the village. And she's done that for many years as well. She can cure people from illness, she treats them, she makes people potions for certain things, so she's always described as being a witch. Her character is interesting as well because another character that you can't like all the time. It's easy to dislike Ina in a lot of parts of this story. But she's interesting because she's conniving and she seems to have a plan. You don't know that she has a plan until you get further on in the story, until little things start falling into place. But she seems to have a plan. I'm not going to tell you what that plan is and what her ends are. You do find out parts of that as the book goes on. But she's interesting because she's secretive. She seems very clever. She seems to be able to manipulate people a lot in this book. And she seems to not think twice about mistreating people for her own benefit as well. So she's not a nice character, even though she does things to help people at different times, like being a wet nurse, like curing them and things like that. She does things for her own ends as well in the story. That's the whole thing with books from this author. Those characters that are unlikable, they end up being the most gripping and engaging characters in the books. You may not like books where authors write unlikable characters who are the main characters and they're on purpose being unlikable. You may not like that, maybe not your cup of tea. But the books from this author, including this book, I do enjoy. I enjoy these books not just because of the characters. I mean, the characters, you can like characters, you can engage with characters that are unlikable. But the questions, the way the questions are framed in the stories, I think that's so clever and well done. The first character I'll talk about is Merrick, of course, and a lot of the book focuses on him. He starts off as a young boy in the village. He's interesting because of just his character makeup. What makes him happy? What makes him sad? And what makes him happy is being mistreated. And that's so strange in a character, especially a child character. To have a child character that enjoys being beaten and mistreated and being hurt, who wants to be, and who thinks that when he is hurt and mistreated, that it brings him closer to God. that's just really odd in a character, and I don't think you'd see that in many books, but in this book you do see that, and it makes up a big part of his personality and his character in this story. When that big change happens for him, so when he becomes the adopted son of Lord William, he still has that part of his personality that he wants happiness, but he wants happiness from being mistreated in a way. So that's still part of his personality. And the other part of his personality is he's too eager to please. He wants to please everybody all the time. And that's a big thing about his personality as well. He thinks pleasing people all the time, like being a yes man all the time, brings him closer to God as well. So he's got very unusual parts of his personality, and all through the book, as he grows in the book, it's like his emotional growth is stunted. William is the lord of the manor, and it's instant dislike for this character. You can't like him at all, basically. He's cruel and mean to everybody, and he doesn't think twice about mistreating people so he can laugh about it. That's basically his main thing in the book, what he does a lot in the book. And it's very continuous with him. It feels a bit repetitive, so he feels one-dimensional in a way. And that's strange to me, because usually with this author, the characters aren't one-dimensional. So it's strange that we've got this character who's a fairly big part of the book, not one of the main focuses of the book, but say a mid-tier character who has really one dimension only in the story. So that was disappointing to me, but the character is still slightly engaging because he has a lot of interactions with Merrick, and Merrick, being engaging as a character, drags William into the forefront a lot in this story. So for that, William is engaging, but disappointing that it seems to be a one-dimensional character. Ina is the character that's thought of as a witch in the village, and she's engaging because of that and her history in the book as well. We get to learn a bit about her history, but also this plan she has that she starts setting out in motion as the book starts, from the start of the book towards the end. When you see that happening, she's engaging for that, because you just see different parts to her, different facets. You see how conniving she is, how secretive, how clever, how manipulative she is as well. You see all different parts of her in this book. So she's engaging for that, and it makes her feel very well-rounded. Again, another character that has very unlikable moments in the story. I think there are one or two moments maybe where you think, oh, okay, she's not too bad as a character, but for most of it, she's unlikable. So as a character who's also there, and we get told she helps people in certain ways, she does a lot of different things in the book that's not helpful. It's there for her own ends. She uses people, she tricks people, and that happens a lot of the time in this book. So again, another character that's hard to like all the time. This book is engaging and interesting. It's not my favourite book by this author, but I did enjoy it. I don't mind the fact that this author writes a lot of unlikable characters, and in every book we have that. It just seems to be that's what it's going to be. I'd be very shocked if we get a book from this author where characters are likable. Maybe that should happen once, I don't know, just for shock value. I think if it happened, would all the people who enjoy her books just say, hang on, doesn't feel right, I don't like that one. But for this book I did like it, I rate it a 4 out of 5. It is a polarising book. I think there'll be readers who are turned off from different scenes and different characters. Some readers may not like the fact that an author creates unlikable characters all the time on purpose. That's, a fair enough point. So be warned that if you want to read this, it has unlikable characters, many of them. It is set in medieval times, which is a first for this author, and there are some scenes and things going on in the book that may shock you, may shock some readers. So be warned about that. On my channel, I review books from all different genres. Have a look on my channel and subscribe. On the screen now, there's a link to another book I think you'll find interesting.